Hi everybody and welcome to this week's Gradcracker webinar where we are absolutely delighted to be joined by Martin-Baker, who is the world leader in the design and manufacture of ejection and crashworthy seats. So they've been advertising, me and Andrew would have said, can't believe it's been this long, but they've been advertising all of their opportunities on Gradcracker for the last 6 years, and they advertise their degree apprenticeships, placements, internships and graduate positions on Gradcracker. So currently on their hub, and they've got 3 opportunities open. So the purchasing and marketing year in industry roles, all starting in September of this year with a deadline of March, and also their mechanical engineering degree apprenticeship, again starting September and again with a deadline of March as well. So make sure after this webinar, you go over to the hub and apply to their opportunities. It's also worth saying it'd be worth following Martin-Baker on Gradcracker as well, because they've got lots of opportunities opening in the autumn. So the opportunities which will open in the autumn are actually for 2025 starts. So they'll be going live with their graduate roles in September, placements in October and degree apprenticeships in December. So as I say, either apply or go and follow. If you do follow when they do open their positions, you will receive an email and push notification. So well worth going and doing a quick follow press. So today we are joined by some fantastic grads and also Andrew, who we've worked with for a number of years. So Andrew, I'm going to come to you first, who is a resource manager at Martin-Baker. So tell us a little bit more about you and your role.
Well, first of all, Carla and Jessica, thank you very much for inviting us to the webinar. We've been really excited about it, and it's just great to have this opportunity to talk about the opportunities that we have. So I'm the resourcing manager. I've been at Martin-Baker for about a year. We have 3 people within the recruitment team, and we are all very passionate about recruitment and Martin-Baker, and we are looking forward to receiving all of the applications from individuals that apply through Gradcracker for our graduate roles.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you for saying thank you. It's lovely to have you here. So describe Martin-Baker in 60 seconds, if you can.
So Martin-Baker, we're an engineering company. We have 2 sites within the UK. So one is based at Denham in Buckinghamshire. We also have a second operational site that's located at Chalgrove in Oxfordshire. We trade commercially on an international scale. And some of the relationships that we've had with our clients have been established for many years. We've been a world leader for over 79 years in terms of the ejection seats, the crashworthy seats, and the aircraft safety systems that we produce as a business. So we've actually saved over 7,700 lives. We're a privately owned business. We have 16,200 ejection seats currently in service, and our designs offer life-saving capabilities. We have 1,200 employees within the UK, and we're growing and just continuously recruiting each year. We've actually got 34 graduates and year in industry colleagues that are currently employed within the business. And we've got a very clear company vision, mission and values as well that everybody within the business is aware of and contributes towards.
And working towards. And that kind of leads nicely on to my next question. So any 2 questions, but firstly, any misconceptions? So you mentioned, you recruit a lot of grads, a lot of interns and degree apprentices. So is there any misconceptions that you come across when you're speaking to people outside of the business that you kind of want to mention as part of this webinar?
I'd say that there's there's a few aspects here. The first is that we have a number of roles that have transferable skills. So you don't have to do an engineering degree to consider all roles at Martin-Baker. So some of the support roles, for example, that we have, individuals could have worked in other sectors or other organizations that don't have an engineering specialism. I think the other, we're open to candidates that may have studied different STEM subjects, for example, that want to enter engineering. And then I think the final misconception is that we don't just advertise graduate roles once a year. So we usually, well, we're always recruiting for graduate manufacturing engineers, for example. So I'd say keep looking at the Martin-Baker hub on Gradcracker, because there's usually opportunities that we recruit for at a graduate level outside of the standard cycle of the graduate program recruitment.
Yeah, definitely. I know when we last spoke before this webinar, there was, you mentioned about the ad hoc opportunities that come up throughout the year as well. So this is why it's so important, people who are watching this webinar, to give them a follow, and then straight away you'll be alerted. So thank you very much for that, Andrew. My last question, the last question would be, is what's the future looking like? You've mentioned internally, you've got your values and things like that you're driving and striving towards. Is there anything that you can kind of share with us as a bit of an insight as part of this webinar?
So operationally, we're going to be very, very busy over the next few years.
Yeah.
So now is a fantastic time for graduates to consider opportunities with defence organisations and suppliers like ourselves that support defence organisations.
Yeah.
The graduate opportunities that we have just keep evolving.
Yeah.
So they get better and better every year. That includes the investments, the rotations that we offer, and I'd say the variety of opportunities as well. And I think that the great thing about Martin-Baker is that we have people that come back to us. So year in industry students, for example, come back and either study on our graduate program, or we hire them within graduate jobs. But there's a lot of support from existing grads that are currently on the program that will be supporting future grads that join our business. And then secondly, the graduates that actually progress. So lots of graduates that start off as within graduate roles actually progress into different positions. So that there's a lot of opportunity and excitement that will certainly come up in the future.
Yeah, so there's two types of graduate opportunities then. There's the graduate program where they do the rotations, and there's also specific opportunities that you go into as a graduate and then stay within that position.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, we've got those roles that we're usually recruiting for that require a degree, and we encourage applicants to apply for those opportunities throughout the year.
Yeah. So some takeaways there then. Again, it's not just about your engineers who are watching this webinar today, it's about STEM students. So as long as you're studying a STEM degree, then obviously you are welcome to apply to the Martin-Baker opportunities. So thank you very much for that, Andrew. It's been brilliant snapshots of who you are as a company and who you are as a person. And what we're going to now is hand over to Jess, and we'll speak to the grads all about their journey so far. And all of the grads who have joined us today all found their roles on Gradcracker.
Yes. And Catherine, you've got a bit of a star as a quick introduction, didn't you?
Yes.
Was it how many years ago? 2 years ago you were sat watching this webinar?
I think it would have been 3. So it was in
3
my
years ago?
second year in the middle of lockdown.
Sat watching this webinar thinking, could this be me one day? And before you know it,
it
here.
It is.
Before you know it, I now work with the people who did it. So.
So it's lovely to have you on today. So I can't wait to hear about your journey and what you've been up to so far at Martin-Baker. So Catherine, I'll start with you. Where did you go to university? What did you study? And when did you join Martin-Baker?
So I went to Durham University. I studied an MEng in general engineering, but specialised in aeronautics. And I've been with Martin-Baker since the end of November.
Brilliant. Good stuff. So thank you so much for that, Catherine. I will come back to you shortly to find out more. Ghislaine, I'm going to come to you next. Similar question. Where did you go to university? What did you study? And when did you join Martin-Baker?
So I was at Sheffield University and I also did an MEng in aerospace engineering, and I joined Martin-Baker in September.
Fantastic. And Joe, similar question to you.
Yeah, so I went to University of Leeds, did an MEng in aerospace engineering as well, and I joined in October 2023.
Brilliant. So all quite early starts, really. So haven't been at the company too long. So let's find out a bit more about your current roles then, and the team and the environment and what it's really like to work at Martin-Baker. So Catherine, I'm going to come back to you first. So what has life been like for you so far in your new role?
So far, so good. I feel like the three of us are quite a poor representation of what degrees people normally come from.
I know, I didn't think that.
Did think that.
Even the six of us on the rotational grad scheme, I think we're maybe half aeronautics, and there's a smattering of mechanical, or one of the guys on the scheme in the year above did automotive for a bit as well. So there's a bit of variety going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm on my first rotation on the rotational graduate scheme.
Yeah.
So I'm currently on a placement in the programs team. So
Okay.
I'm working closely with clients. My team's working on a sustainment program rather than development. So our seats are in production. They're out in the field, they're flying, but we're also rolling out new ones all the time. So Martin-Baker operates as IPTs, so they're integrated product teams. So we have a selection of sub-teams that all work together on the same project. So in a typical day, I'll interact with other project managers and also with systems teams, the design teams, who are all part of our team working on our specific products. But I also will interact with people outside of our IPT. So I'll go and work with people from experimental or quality or RAMs, and we'll get to know them and how they contribute to our project. But yeah, so I guess program managers, because I didn't know this when I watched the webinar, we kind of coordinate the project. It's sort of project management sort of thing. So we coordinate the timeline, keep things on track. We make sure the hardware and the personnel are sorted for tasks and tests, and make sure everything goes smoothly. But we also interact with a customer-facing role. So we have regular meetings with our customers to check in that everything's going okay, both in service and in production. And if they've got any issues, we'll direct them to the correct people internally. So we're that sort of interface between the internal and external stakeholders, I guess.
Catherine, were you, again, wow, first of all, wow. But going back to kind of that client-facing stuff already, I'm quite surprised quite how early on then you are put in front of a client. Were you expected that as part of the role? You know, how did you find that? As well, kind of getting used to the team that you're working with and then being with a client, how have you found it?
Yeah, I think I went to my first customer meeting within about a week of starting the job.
Did you really? Wow.
Which was a bit surreal. I was sat there on mute, feeling a bit terrified. But yeah, so I've had the opportunity to go to a face-to-face customer meeting as well, which was really interesting to see how everyone interacts with different people from the business. But yeah, it wasn't entirely unexpected. We'd had a bit of pre-warning that was something we'd experience in programs, but it did come around a bit faster than I expected.
Yeah.
But everyone in my team's really supportive and helpful. So I'd sit there and make a list of all the acronyms I didn't understand in a meeting, and then just turn around to the guy next to me and go, help, at the end of the meeting. And everyone's really happy to help you, even if it seems like a silly question. They're like, oh yeah, why would you know that? We haven't told you. So
and that's really good that you've done that and made the effort to, you know, okay, let's learn myself and let's ask those questions. And again, you know, as a reminder of Martin-Baker, again, you almost forget about, you know, the crossover in terms of, yes, you're producing new seats or, you know, whatever systems, but you also look after them after they've gone out and once they're in flight, like you say. So it's a really exciting kind of journey, isn't it? I guess, you know, you from kind of start of the design to knowing that it's going out and seeing a journey, you know, the journey of the project. That must be quite an exciting aspect for you, knowing that you're going to get that exposure.
Yeah, it really is. And because all the teams work on different things, then you sort of know that, especially for me and Joe, I guess, when we rotate round, we'll get exposure to a different program who maybe operates slightly differently. They might be at a different point in the development phase. But Martin-Baker, one of the things they're really proud of is that every seat that's still in service will be supported by us. So even if it's a seat from the 50s or whatever, it'll still be, we'll still go and make sure it's operating properly.
Do you know, and then again, that's really good for you as an individual to be exposed again to lots of different types of engineering techniques that would have been used then to now, and obviously things going forward. So really interesting. So thank you so much, Catherine. Again, I can't wait to delve a little bit later on about the projects and things that you've been working in. So Ghislaine, I'm going to come to you. Similar kind of question. What's your current role, and what's the team like, and what have you been up to since you started?
So I'm a graduate RAMS engineer, so I'm not on the rotation program. I went straight in as a RAMS engineer.
Okay.
And that stands for reliability, availability, maintainability, and safety. It's quite
Right,
niche.
okay.
Not many people know what it is. I didn't before I started. But kind of, if I'd summarize that, as kind of making sure that the seats work exactly as they should when they need to. So we're working a lot with like the design department and the test department, and we're sort of in that design support role, making sure that everything is going to be safe, everything's going to be working, doing a lot of kind of reliability prediction stuff, hazard analysis, maintenance
Sure.
policies, because like Catherine said, some of these seats are, 40 plus years old. So we've
Yeah.
got to make sure it's still going to work 40 years down the line. And we've still got that reliability. So yeah, I do some technical stuff, some mathsy stuff, and then also spend a fair bit of time in the workshops, actually like looking at test hardware, getting like hands-on, taking things apart, having a look at it, which is really fun. Yeah.
Brilliant. So yeah, I was going to ask one of you, and again, you can all kind of add to this, but yeah, do you actually seen an actual test of your seats in action? Have you seen anything like that yet? And have you seen that at full scale? How does that work? How do you just kind of do it in a kind of a controlled environment on a miniature scale? How does it work?
So we've got sort of the capacity to do some testing on
Have
the
you?
Denham site, which is where I am.
Right.
And then we do like kind of like a lot of more exciting tests and like sledge tests and stuff at a different site, which I'm
Right.
hopefully going to be able to go watch some tests at some point.
Fingers
It's kind
crossed.
of in the
Yeah.
plan. But
Yeah.
at the moment, I've watched some of the smaller tests, stuff like load testing was one I went to watch recently, like static load testing, and kind of just put a weight on the seat and they kind of just push down until it breaks and see what happens,
Yeah.
which is quite fun. And then someone from my team will come in and look at the components afterwards and say, there's a crack there, there's a scratch there, does this pass the test, does it not? All that sort of stuff.
And then would you say as well, I know it's so early on, into your role and things like that, but are you seeing obviously new techniques coming in, things like AI, the kind of machine learning and things like that affecting Martin-Baker and how you can test and your predictions and things like that? Are you using that in any aspect of your job so far?
We're definitely, I think I've come in at a point where we're sort of starting. I think there's a bit of chat about it, about how we could probably like make some of the processes a bit more automated. But at the moment, it's pretty like we're not really using AI at the moment.
No.
It's a lot of like Excel stuff, like number crunching.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see it maybe going that way in the future.
Yeah, because interesting to see how, it will affect, your industry and what you guys are doing. So in terms of those predictions, how do you predict and how does your team support you and how do you kind of work together to get those predictions?
Yeah, so one of the things I'm working on at the moment is a foundation document, which is basically all the data of like every component on the seat. And we really break it down to every single component, every single nut and bolt and lever and anything there is, cushion covers and like Velcro and all these random things.
Yeah.
And we have a big database of like data really. It's just reliability of all these parts. And we get it from data that's come from the field, so from aircraft and seats that have been out in the field for years and years. And then also some of it is from testing on site. And we take all of that and we can kind of put it together and almost add it up in a way to work out the reliability of the seat overall. And we can kind of look at it and do sort of like fault tree analysis stuff where you can look and see what the safety critical components are and like maybe where we should put in redundancy, where we don't need redundancy, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. You can hear already from both of Catherine and Ghislaine, your roles, going back to the point, I'm just trying to reiterate the point, Andrew, that why you would recruit from all STEM disciplines. By sounds of it, Ghislaine, there's a lot of kind of mathematical workings out and things like that, to understand, again, understand those predictions. So yeah, so all STEM. So I know we're kind of just focusing on you guys and your roles and your backgrounds, but you can see why Martin-Baker do recruit from more STEM disciplines, which is really, really great. So thank you so much for that. So Jo, I'm going to come to you next. Again, I keep similar kind of question. What have you been up to, and tell us a bit about your current role?
So I'm on the rotational grad scheme, same as Catherine. So that's 4 6-month rotations. I'm currently in systems engineering, and then I'm within systems, I'm in the Mark 16 team. Systems, quite difficult to explain. I don't even really know what it is yet, even though I've been here for...
I'm not going to understand.
Yeah. Well, it's basically, because also we do it slightly differently at Martin-Baker, I think, but effectively it's anything from, basically we need to have a holistic view of the seat. So for example, if you're going to change one thing over here, how would that affect something over there, kind of thing? Having that kind of general understanding of like the workings of the subsystems and how they all fit together. There's some other stuff as well. So there's a lot of like, you know, the customers will come to us and say, you know, we need the seat to go, you know, X amount of meters high when we eject. And it's like, okay, so we digest that to the rest of the team. Sorry, well, yeah, the rest of the Mark 16 team. And we're like, okay, that means that we need a rocket that's this strong, has this much thrust, you know, has this burn duration, whatever. And then we also do a lot of simulation work. So basically sort of like simulating the actual seat, based on sort of test data. So you'll have like a model that you fine tune to try and match the way that the seat is actually performing in real life. And then from that, once you've got a model that really works, you can do sort of pretty reliable testing, but not without actually spending loads of money on the test. So you'll be like, you know, if you're going at this altitude and at this speed, what will the ejection look like? What the force is going to be like on the body, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's quite varied, which is one of my favorite bits actually.
Well, Jo, it sounds like you understand it to me. So that was perfect introduction. So tell us a bit about your team then. Is it a big team? And how long are you on this rotation for?
So the rotation I'm in at the moment is, well, they're all 6 months, and I've been in here for about 5 months now. So I've got only a month left, which is quite sad. And actually, it's less than a month now. It's probably more like 2 weeks. But yeah, so I'm in the Mark 16 team. The Mark 16 is one of the most like produced seats, put it that way. We have it in a lot of planes at the moment. So the team itself is quite big, although actually my systems team isn't big enough, is what we've come to realize recently. So they're really upset that I'm moving on to my next rotation, because they're like, we really need you. There's so much work to be done. But well, I mean, it makes me feel great, to be fair.
Yeah, imagine.
But yeah, so there's seats in all sorts of aircraft. But a lot of them are already in the air. So it's a bit like Catherine was saying. It's sort of more sustainment, although there is still some development on certain aircraft. But yeah, a lot of it is sustainment.
Random question. Do you ever design seats unique for the user, or is it always kind of design a seat generally for...
Probably not. And that's actually more for the user point of view, just because if they wanted a whole new seat, that would cost them an incredible amount of money.
That money.
Yeah, so it's usually based on, because the biggest problem is, and actually I was going to mention this earlier, with the AI thing, the big constraint that we work towards, like a lot of aerospace companies, is the fact that you need to make sure that it's always going to work no matter what, and it needs to fly and fly and fly again. It could even go its whole life without ejecting. In fact, that's the fun fact, is 1 in 10 ejection seats actually get ejected. So in the meantime, it's basically like, yeah, you need to make sure that it's always going to be ready, and therefore you need to make sure that the tools you're using, like AI, for example, aren't going to give you like erroneous results. So that will take a while to get involved. And also from like a regulation point of view, it's going to take a while before people start trusting it enough for aerospace. And especially when it's not only aerospace, but actually literally an ejection seat, saving the person's life when it matters, kind of thing.
That's a really, really good point, Jo. Thank you so much for adding that, because again, I think, you know, it is AI, a lot of industries are jumping onto it, you know, using it. But, you know, in your industry, what you're doing on a day-to-day, it's life, isn't it? This is your end goal, is to make sure that person survives. So there's no, you know, messing around with that. So absolutely, really, really good point there. So you see, you've got a couple of weeks left, and then you're on to the next rotation. How do you decide where you're going to go next?
Well, we get to request. We don't necessarily go where we want to, but I luckily I requested, and I got what I wanted. So I'm going into mechanical engineering is my next one. So that's sort of like a lot more CAD for, you know, all the STEM users, CAD and like FEA, all these tools that we learn at uni basically, which is quite exciting. But you're right, it's a bit difficult. You know, we had this when we first joined the company. We didn't really know. I mean, I didn't know what systems was. I didn't know what programs meant. I didn't know, you know, there's ET as one of them, environmental test. I didn't know what that was.
No.
So the first rotation is mostly random, to be fair, but very quickly you kind of, because of a lot of the teams work with each other, you know, you kind of work out what everyone's responsibility is and what their roles are. And from that, you get to, you know, make an informed decision about what you'd like to do. I'm also lucky enough to be currently, I mean, there's no guarantee that I'll finish it, but it's basically following the sort of life cycle of the seat. So you've got systems, which is like the very basic beginning. You take the requirements from the customer, you transform it into like, okay, what does this actually look like? Kind of build up a seat with lots of documentation and stuff like that as well. Then send it off to MechEng. MechEng will take that and then go down to a component level and actually design, you know, what does that look like kind of thing. And build up the seat on paper kind of thing. Then it gets manufactured, and then environmental test, basically go and break everything to see what it's breaking, what it looks like when it breaks, which is actually where RAMS comes in as well, because RAMS will go and work out why it broke there and stuff. And then finally you've got programs at the end, which is sort of like the kind of overview of the whole thing. They're watching that whole process happen, sort of thing. So far I've done systems, I've done MechEng, so ideally I do environmental test next, but there's no guarantee.
Absolutely. And then in terms of when you come off, sorry, just to clarify again, how long was the program for?
It's 2 years, so 4 rotations, 6 months. Yeah.
Fab. Good stuff. Joe, we're going to come to you next on projects, but Catherine, I'm going to ask you, you need to add in here. You're a perfect example. You mentioned this earlier. If there's anything that we don't cover, it's down to you to drop it in. Because you watched the webinar a couple of years ago. If we forget to cover anything, you are the person that I'm going to rely on to say, actually, we need to talk about this as well. So do let me know if I miss anything. Yeah, no pressure, by the way. Okay, so Kath, we're going to come to you on projects. So what have you been up to? A particular project that you've worked on so far? Again, it could be in the rotation you're in now, or it could be something completely separate. But what have you done so far that's really stood out to you?
So I've kind of only done one project, as it were. Because programs we're so focused on, I guess, the bigger picture of how the whole seat integrates. We dabble in lots of little things, but you don't really get that in depth in any of them, and I guess in a lot of ways. So we've got quite a wide surface view of a lot of the company. So I guess that's been my main thing, is I've interacted with so many people across the company, because we're quite a small company and we're all based, well, a lot of us are all based on the same site. Then if you've got a question, you can just go and knock on someone's door, and most of the time, as long as they're not working from home, then they'll happily answer your question and tell you about what they do day to day, even if it's not necessarily relevant to why you turned up on their doorstep. But it's just been so nice to turn up and go, I need this information from you, and they're like, oh, do you actually know what it is you're doing? Let me explain the background to this bit of project to you, and how we got to this point, and then where we're hoping to take it from here. Even though, so me and Joe are only in our placements for 6 months, so it might be that they're going, well, this will happen after you've left, but come and see us if you want to know how it goes, and that kind of thing. So that's been really nice. But yeah, I guess it's mainly that it's all cutting edge technology. So even when I only see bits of hardware for a few minutes before delivering them to someone else, you can sit and like hold it in your hands and look at it and go, oh, that's how that fits together. Seen it on a drawing. Now I can see it in real life. And we have seats lying around all over site that you can wander over and go, oh, that's how it fits on, which is, yeah.
And Catherine, nice. Again, we've done quite a lot of these webinars over the years and, you know, speaking to employers, but it seems quite a unique experience that you're all getting to say that, you know, Joe, you kind of touched upon then that whole almost life cycle of a seat, and having people at your fingertips that, you know, have been working at Martin-Baker, I guess, for maybe potentially a lot of their career, you know, worked on a lot of these projects, worked on a lot of seats, got a lot of experience. It must be so nice as someone early in your career knowing that you've got access to these people and you're working in a company where you are seeing that variety, you know, you are getting that exposure. And Catherine, you know, just to kind of second that, is I'm guessing that's what you're feeling from what you've said.
Yeah, so everyone's really friendly, and you ask around and you find out there's people who've been here for most of their careers who are approaching retirement, and they've been here for decades and are full of knowledge about the development of the seats and where we came from and how things have changed. And they're always just so happy to help and tell you about things and explain a concept to you, even if it's not necessarily strictly relevant to your work. So it's just nice being able to get that bigger picture and broader understanding, even when it's, I guess some of them are trying to steal us their teams, but I have to leave them be on that one.
Catherine, again, just to go back to that idea, because I just think, again, your journey is a really great one to kind of reiterate again to the students. Is there anything or any advice that you could give to the audience, knowing where you were 2-3 years ago to where you are now? Is there anything that the students could be doing, upskilling themselves in a certain way? You know, Joe, you mentioned about your next rotation. Obviously, you've got the like software CAD side. Is there anything that a student could be doing now to start to think, oh, I'm going to tap into that a little bit more in my personal time and upskill myself slightly on that? Is there anything that you would recommend the audience to do, Catherine?
I mean, I got quite lucky. I did a STEM-related society in my spare time.
So again, I can't hear you. I don't
Oh, sorry, my microphone slipped down
back,
again.
back.
Yeah, I got lucky. I did a STEM-related society in my spare time at uni and got very invested in it, poured a lot of time into it, and then I turned up for my interviews and I got asked one question and then I talked for 20 minutes. And then they went, hang on a minute, we've only got 10 minutes left, and looked down the list of questions and went, well, you've covered most of this, just talking about your experiences. But even if you can't find a STEM-related society that is like interesting to you, then even just talking about it, maybe you've done a leadership position in a musical society or in a sports team or stuff like that, it's, I guess, showing that you can put the effort in and you have interests, that you're an interesting person with more to you than just, I did my degree.
Yes. Catherine, can I just bring you around with me when I come and talk to all these students? Can I just say, look, this is how you do it? That is absolute perfect example. And this is, again, to the audience, why I say to you all, go and get involved in extracurricular activities. Great way to practice those communication skills when you are in these situations. You sat in front of scary Andrew thinking, what am I going to tell him? What am I going to say?
Scary Andrew.
He's definitely not scary Andrew. Yeah, exactly. You can, have that confidence before you even start. A perfect example there. So thank you so much, Catherine. Ghislaine, I'm going to come to you. Projects. I know, again, it's a hard one because I know you're so early into your role, but is there a particular thing that you've done so far that's really stood out to you?
Yeah, so I think my role is a bit different to Catherine's in that we definitely look at the smaller picture and we look more in depth at things. So I've been involved in quite a few projects in just like tasks that are a bit more in depth, I guess. Like something I was working on recently was a firing handle safety requirements document. So basically coming up with a list of safety requirements and like design constraints for design to then work with when designing a firing handle. So it's quite fun, quite creative. You just sort of think, what could go wrong? What should we try and avoid? And it's even stuff like, when the pilots are in a rush getting into the aircraft, they might step on the handle, and we don't want the seat to accidentally eject. So that's one of the requirements. It has to be able to withstand being stepped on, like that sort of stuff. Or like when maintainers disconnect everything to do some maintenance and then they put it all back again, we need to make sure that it's impossible to connect up incorrectly. So when they reassemble, they're not going to accidentally do something wrong. And we need to see how can we like make sure that's designed out. So stuff like that is quite fun. It's quite creative. And then we sort of take that and it influences the design. And then in a couple of weeks or couple of months maybe, I'll be able to test an actual firing handle and see if it passes all of those requirements. Yes, that's quite fun to see how it has an actual impact.
I'm trying not to give away what you mentioned just before this webinar because it's your fun fact, right? The audience, Gillian will tell you at the end what her fun fact is, but you've got to think of all these different situations, haven't you? Situations that you might never even considered before that could happen. So how do you kind of prepare for that? How obviously it's practice, it's the years of skill that you all have, and obviously all the situations that, again, that you've probably found yourself in, or, you know, your seats have found yourself themselves in. So how do you prepare for all those situations?
Yeah, so it's a lot of, especially because I'm new and I don't really know a huge amount. It's like working with my manager, learning from the people around me.
Yeah,
There's definitely like an engineer on the team. I think he's been at the company since the 80s. So,
wow.
you know, you can ask Chris, oh, like, why have we included that on the list? And he's like, well, in 2001, this happened. So now we have to do this, which is quite cool to, again, like Catherine said, learn from people around me. And like that absolute like wealth of knowledge is so cool. So yeah, it's just sort of thinking about it, brainstorming, talking to people, thinking kind of, if I was in a rush or if I like wasn't following the procedure properly, what would I do? Because it's not necessarily that people do things wrong. It's just kind of, you know, if you've done it for so long, you start going on autopilot. So how do we stop that from happening, and how do we design out the errors that might come in from that?
Definitely. It's absolutely just incredible what you guys do. So in terms of your kind of next steps, so unlike Joe and Catherine, where they're on their rotation projects, how did it work for you? Where do you go next? Or are you kind of sat in this position until the foreseeable, until you decide to move into another department or whatever? How does it work?
Yeah, so I'm staying in Rams. Yeah, so I'm staying here, learning from people around me. I've got a couple of, I think I've got 3 training courses sort of planned. I think the first one's in June, and then the next ones are maybe 6 months after that, and then 6 months after that, where we do sort of a week-long training course at a university. And I think I'm doing one on safety, one on maintainability, and one on reliability. So there's a bit more to kind of like back up my knowledge and back up the things that I've been learning from my manager and my team. Yeah.
So get kind of visually, if you're going to try to look at your experiences slightly different, instead of going kind of the breadth, you're going the depth of knowledge in a particular area. If you did want to have more of a breadth of knowledge across different areas of the business, is that still accessible to you then, Gillian? Or is that something you can do in your own time when you've got, say, a free couple of hours to kind of have those conversations, make those relationships?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we work quite closely with a couple of other teams.
Okay.
Particularly design and test. And so there have been times where I've sort of been down in the workshops and the test engineers are like, oh, do you want to come see this thing that we're pulling apart and we're breaking? And so go have a look at that. And so there's definitely opportunity to sort of get that experience in different parts of the business. Yeah.
That's really good. And again, it seems as you're all saying a very similar thing, isn't it? You've got some fantastic people that you're working with that you can ask those questions. They're willing to help and teach and train you and give you and pass down that information, which is really, really coming across, which is really, really nice. So thank you so much for that. Joe, I'm going to come to you next. A similar kind of question again. Particular project or anything that you've done so far that's really stood out to you?
So this one's a bit different to all the stuff that I mentioned we do in systems, but again, just goes to show we do all sorts of stuff. So I worked on validating a piece of software that we have that was built in-house. So the idea is that like we collect a load of data when we do testing, and we need something to sort of like bring it all together and spit out a useful output, which is usually like injury metrics, they're called. So like, how do you predict if your spine's going to be okay when you eject, or your neck, or, you know, whatever. And so what I would do is just sort of manually calculate these metrics and then compare it to what this software was outputting. It ended up being so much more complicated than I thought it'd be. Like, it was sort of like loads of really niche topics all bound up into one. Like, I've sort of got some like biomechanics in there, some like C# coding, some sort of like, it's just, yeah, there was a lot to it. Now, the reason that it stood out to me was that I received so much help for it. Like, people were so willing to sort of immediately be there and come and discuss it, which, you know, I think everyone's mentioned so far. Actually, it's that kind of ethos in the company of sort of everyone's really keen to help. And I think a big reason for that actually is that everyone's really passionate. If you get an engineer talking about their ejection seat, they will not stop. Like, it's just constant. So they love it when you're asking these kind of questions, and therefore you gain a lot of knowledge as well, kind of thing. Like, it's like a nice positive circle.
And I think ultimately you're all pulling in the same direction. You've all ultimately, no matter where you are at in whatever department, you've all got the same end goal.
Absolutely.
And so, so it must be so nice to work with so many passionate people that are at your fingertips, like I say, just literally across the corridor.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and it never fails as well. The other nice thing as well is that you get loads of because a lot of this, like I can't remember if Catherine or Ghislaine said this, but it's all about like, there's people that have been here for 70 years and they'll remember, what happened in 99 when we changed that thing, and oh yeah, that actually affected that. It's just that knowledge share, like they're sort of like, nowadays it's all about getting it down in writing so that by the time they move on from the company, that's
the thing,
we don't lose it, kind of thing. But yeah, no, it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating listening to especially those older people.
Yeah, definitely. Really, really interesting. So next, I want to move on a bit about training development. And again, you've all kind of covered this in your own ways and your own experiences so far. And Ghislaine, you kind of touched upon that. You've got some really exciting training development coming your way soon. But Catherine, for you, what's the kind of training development that you've had, and what have you got to come?
So I guess on the grad scheme, we've got a sort of unique experience in that we aren't with any one team for that long. So I've actually just got to the end of a one-to-one training course on our project management system. It was 3 sessions, each 2 hours, and I've now got a far more in-depth understanding of a project management software than I ever thought I would have. But it was really interesting, and I now understand what I've been doing day to day so much better, and all the little things that I was like, why is this not working? And now I know, which is nice. But also, everyone's, as we've all said, everyone's willing to teach you. So even if you've not got formal like development programs going on, then you learn so much just from working with more experienced engineers. So in my case, there's people in my team who've been program managers with this team for over 10 years, which is they're just such an amazing resource to go to when you need help. But from a more, I guess, practical standpoint, we are encouraged to go for chartership and incorporated statuses with the institute. So we had a visit from the IMechE a couple of weeks back that me and Joe both sat in, and we were told about the routes through it and how we could best help ourselves to get through. But we also have reviews at the end of each rotation, and we're encouraged to link that back to the what is it called now, the requirements for chartership. So
And other thing, Catherine, do you have things like mentors and things like that? So when you are starting out the company, or even before when you started in kind of that, I can always use that word, onboarding process, before you join the company, did you get any support there?
So now I'm here, you get a sort of mentor in each of your placements. So
Catherine, do you know what you actually sound? Do you actually sound?
Have I gone again?
Yeah.
Sorry. So when I started my placement, you when you meet your line manager, they're sort of your mentor for that 6 months. So you'll go to them with any of your problems or any queries you've got. But because they're a specialist in your department and they know a lot more of the answers than a general mentor would. But me and Joe are actually in the second cohort of rotational grads at Martin-Baker. So we're buddied up with one of the year above us. So they've got 2 of us buddied up with one of them. And they're always there if we need to drop them a message about anything, whether it's actually Martin-Baker related or if it's just kind of where do I go to live? Which is a question I asked HR before I turned up as well, and they were all very happy to help.
Do you know, again, that's a really good point to make, because and I'm glad you said something like that, because again, I think that transition from uni to you're a working full-time job, how do you relocating, how is it going to work, where am I going to live, what's it like, what are the best areas, whatever. So again, really good point. And again, it's nice to say that you've got a HR team that you can ask those questions, and you've got that reassurance that there is someone at the end of the phone or email, whatever, to help you. Ghislaine, slightly different again with your role. So you've mentioned about those kind of training programs that you've got coming up, but have you got anything similar to Catherine in terms of like the mentor or anyone else that is kind of a support for you, and can you still get chartered and everything in your role?
So the first person I go to is also my line manager. They're super helpful, teaching me everything, talking me through everything, always available. And then I can go to anyone on my team really, so that's really easy and really great. Everyone's like, there's always someone to ask my question to.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think where Simma is at, we can go for chartership and the company supports it and will help you through it. I think there's someone on my team currently going through the process. And yeah, you sort of, because you need to display certain skills for chartership, your manager will try and put you on certain projects that sort of really highlight that and demonstrate that. So they do try and sort of tailor the work you're getting to help you through that process. Yeah.
Brilliant, great stuff. And Joe, I'm going to come to you. If you could tell us a bit about the social aspects of working at Martin-Baker and again, Catherine and Ghislaine, you can add to this as well. What experience have you had so far?
There's been various bits. So my department's known, for better or for worse, for being quite sociable, actually.
Yeah.
So we do sort of like, we go for tea breaks. I think the problem is that sometimes we go for too many tea breaks. We have a walk at lunch together. We all sit sort of around. I think partly because the department, a bit like programs, you really need to be communicating to a lot of other people, a lot of other departments. So we know a lot of people, kind of thing. And then outside of that, there's stuff like we'll go out for like a monthly-ish social. So like last time we did it, it was somebody's leaving do, so we went to go have a curry. You might have one pint after work because we're all driving. Or we went to go and see Top Gun the other day as a group as well.
Of course, you went to see Top Gun.
Obviously. Well, actually, I realised it's really bad publicity for Martin-Baker, but we moved. It was quite enjoyable nonetheless.
Well, well,
Jessica's actually met Tom Cruise, haven't you, Jessica?
I actually have.
That's a claim to fame.
That's really cool.
Can you imagine me meeting Tom Cruise? I was an
well,
absolute psycho. I was like, oh my God.
And she hadn't just had one pint because she wasn't driving. Just set the scene.
I think
my voice would go higher pitched if I met her. She's better than yours.
Oh, that's funny. Good social. Thanks.
Yeah, very good social. Sorry, yeah. And there's actually something else I wanted to mention as well. It's the fact that we get to sort of communicate with upper management sort of on a regular basis. Like they're always around, the head of the department's often there at the socials as well. VP of engineering is always in the building. We'll have lunch with him. Like yesterday I was sat next to him, kind of thing. So it's really nice that you get to sort of like, you're always around these senior people.
Yeah. And again, that's just the message that's come out, for the last hour. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are in the business. Everyone wants to talk by the sounds of it, and you're all sharing stories. Again, passion is all going in the right direction, which is amazing. Catherine, Ghislaine, have you got anything to add to that one?
I guess on a similar note to what Joe just said, I actually met the VP. Well, we both met the VP for engineering before we even technically joined. We had a keeping in touch day before we came, and he just came and sat down for lunch with us, and we got him talking, and he left at the end because he had another meeting and realized he hadn't actually eaten any of his dinner. He'd just been talking to us the whole time, and he's just so enthusiastic to share all of his stories and what he knew. But I also met the VP for programs on like my second day on the job. I sat down and he just wanders over, and as he walked away I realised I had no idea who he was. I was there turning to the person next to me, that was the VP. I really hope he never watches this.
That's cool. That's nice that it is like that, and there is no that almost like hierarchy, feeling awkward, that everyone kind of pulls in together. Ghislaine, sorry, have you got anything to add to that one?
I do actually want to mention, like the Rams team are the same. Like we all hang out at lunch, we go for events and socials and things, which is really nice. And we've also, as a company, just set up the Women's Network. So we've just kind of finished organising it all. The launch meeting is actually tomorrow.
Right.
And so we've set it up for like the development and like support of women in STEM and women in the company. We've got like development things happening and social things and like outreach projects at schools and unis. So by the time anyone watching joins, that will be very much a thing that's happening. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, Carla, we're going to hand back to you because we want to find out how to apply now. What's the process?
Perfect. Thank you very much, everybody. Andrew. Come on then, tell us more. How do people apply and what's the application process?
Well, the best thing to do is to use Gradcracker and get your application in.
Yeah.
So going back to my point before, if we've got non-graduate program roles, then look under the Martin-Baker hub profile to have a look at our open roles. But secondly, the actual graduate programs, whether that's the business graduate program or the engineering one, or indeed with the year in industry programs, are actually quite cyclical. So from September to December time, we put the job adverts out for the following year. And the testing, assessment and selection process would usually take place between November to January. And then the job offers are made, I'd say, between January to February each year. So some roles we actually extend. It depends how many applications we get through. Some of the programs are more business focused. So, for example, at the moment we've got a year in industry program that's focused with purchasing, and an additional one in marketing. And they have slightly different requirements where, for example, we'd encourage applications from individuals that have studied a business degree. So there's also a bit of flex there with the roles that we've got open, and how many as well, because that can change. And then between February, March time to the end of summer, it's a case of keeping in contact, making sure there's two-way dialogue, answering any of those questions. Some individuals actually have to move, so it's helping them, those people connect, and lots of the graduates get together and find accommodation locally. And then it's a case of graduates starting from September time, which is great.
I was going to ask that, Andrew, actually. So the grads here all had different start dates. You know, it could have been September, October, November. I think I got that right, everybody. Are you quite flexible on start dates then?
We are. I mean, the ideal is to start most individuals at the same time. So most of our graduates, I think this year, started at the end of August or the start of September. But it depends on the requirements.
Okay, so there is some flexibility there. And then thinking from, you know, a resourcing manager's point of view, who's been doing, you know, early careers recruitment for a while now, what hints and tips, I'm trying not to rage you, what hints and tips would you give students to make them successful about applying to Martin-Baker?
So the first thing is, and these are basic recommendations, but I think the first one is for applicants to make sure you do a spell check and check your grammar in your application. So if you're submitting a CV or filling out an application form, it's making sure that you haven't made any errors relating to spelling mistakes. And the second one is, try not to be nervous about testing. So testing is all about measuring and testing capabilities, and some of the assessments that we do, it may involve one or two or three different assessments. But the more testing you do, the better it is that you will become, because some of the assessments, if you don't have the abilities, then you may need to practice towards them. But the assessment provider that we use actually provides test examples that you can use. So but I'd say try not to be nervous about them, because they are designed to assess your capabilities, but they're also approachable. And I think the third area is with interview prep. So just be yourself. Try not to be somebody else. If you need to prep around with some of your responses, there's some really good competency-based question templates that you can follow in terms of your response, and how to structure those responses. But interviews are a two-way process, so don't forget that, and come with some questions for the interviewers that you meet as well on the selection days.
Yeah, definitely. I think some students are a bit more reserved about come in with a notepad full of notes and questions and things like that. And that's absolutely fine, isn't it? Because it does show that they've done the prep, they've got the questions to ask you, and don't be afraid to show off, show that you've done the research, show that you've watched these Gradcracker webinars like Catherine did a couple of years ago. That's what you're looking for. Yes, I guess that's a yes.
Yes,
thumbs up,
big
yeah.
yes.
Big yes. So just to go back to the grads then, obviously you've recently been through the process in the last year or so. So any hints and tips that you would give from your point of view, students going through the process? So it could be going through the application process or actually starting at Martin-Baker. What hints and tips would you give? And Ghislaine, I'm going to start with you.
So something about my application was that I had never actually done any reliability or safety modules at uni before I applied for the RAMS role.
Yeah.
It was a bit out of the blue. I just thought it sounded really interesting.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely fine. You just have to show you kind of have that engineering logic and that thought process, and that you're willing to learn about it.
Yeah.
And they don't expect you to be experts in something or to have done it before, in my case, as long as you're like willing and able to learn about it.
I think that's good as well, isn't it? It's showing that you are willing. They don't expect you to be, an engineer for 10 years experience because you are a recent grad. So I think it is showing your workings and things like that. Thanks, Ghislaine. Catherine, any hints and tips?
I think I've got probably two. The first
Go
one,
for it. You're allowed to have them.
don't undersell yourself is the main one, because any experience you've got is valuable, even if it's not directly you worked for an engineering company or you've done a year in industry or whatever. I didn't do either of those particularly. I did an internship over the summer and that's about it. But the experience you've gained, even in projects at uni that have been part of your courses and things like that, that's really important to talk about. The other one is learn from my mistakes and check which PDF you've uploaded to your file upload on an application.
There's a story here,
CV covered in comments and got rejected very quickly from a company. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. Check your file uploads. It's a mistake you'll only make once.
Oh, bless you. Well, that's all history now. You've been massively successful at Martin-Baker, so there you go. Thanks, Catherine. Joe?
Yeah, I think a big part of it, once you've got past the academic sort of like boundaries, like the testing and grades and things like that, once you actually get to the assessments, I think who you are as a person becomes quite important. And I never sort of really realized that until now that I've been on the other side of it. These people are going to be working with you 5 days a week. They really want you to be an all right person, basically.
Yeah.
And it's also the second quick thing is don't fret too much if one bit of your application doesn't go as well as you would have liked. It is still quite a holistic view. There's a lot of parts of the application that all come together. So, I did one interview that went rubbishly, but then the rest was all fine, and here I am. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Joe. And then on to my last two favourite rounds of the webinars. So the first one is favourite thing about working at Martin-Baker. And Andrew, I'm going to come to you first. What's your favourite thing?
Everybody at Martin-Baker is very, very proud of our product.
Perfect. Well, that's Martin-Baker in a snapshot. Thank you very much, Andrew. Ghislaine?
Mine would be like the variety of work that I do. So the different reports, different documents, being able to go into the workshop and have that practical time as well as the sort of more technical stuff I do in the office. That's what I enjoy.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Catherine.
I guess the main thing for me is that we genuinely save lives. The tally has gone up by 5 since I joined the company 4 months ago, which is kind of incredible. There was a double ejection 3 weeks ago now, from an Indian Air Force Hawk, and we all get notifications, we get emails through, it's been an ejection, and everyone's really excited about every single one of them. They all matter to us. So
wow. Perfect. Thank you very much, Catherine. It's just mind-blowing, isn't it, what you guys do? And Joe?
Well, aside from the cool factor of working on a seat that's got kilos of explosives on it, I say probably the people, like I was talking about before. It's just, like the ethos. I'm continually impressed by it.
Perfect. And then last round, cool, interesting facts. And this is what Jess was relating to a little bit earlier on. So, Andrew, what would be your cool and interesting fact?
So at Martin-Baker, we have a tie club for individuals who have been successfully ejected from a Martin-Baker ejection seat.
Yeah, Perfect. Thank you,
But they have
Andrew.
a good social.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I bet they have a good time.
You're not going to get an invite, Jess.
Once they get together.
She's like, can I? Ghislaine?
I've got a fun story.
Yes, do this
about my
story.
underwater
Love this
ejection.
story.
Back in like the 1950s, an airplane like failed to take off from an aircraft carrier, went into the water, started sinking, and the boat went over the aircraft, cut it in half, the sinking even faster, and the pilot pulled the ejection handle and it still worked, and he managed to eject while underwater and survived.
That is
And it's just
amazing.
that, yeah.
How do you think
Amazing
all of us?
I know, God, just one thing after another. Thank you, Ghislaine.
Amazing.
I think I'm doing
Good
this in the
story.
right order. Catherine, Faith, and Joe, because yours link. So, Catherine, you go first.
So we test our seats on a rocket-propelled sled before we put them in an aircraft, and our rocket sled goes at 320 meters per second, which is almost double the land speed record for an F1 car.
Yeah.
And it also does 0 to 60 in 0.08 seconds.
Speedy. Joe, come on then, follow up.
Which leads to mine, which is that in order to get to those crazy speeds, we actually use old Sidewinder missiles to propel the seat. So we use 6 of them strapped to the back of the sled.
Fabulous. Thank you all very much for joining us today on this Gradcracker webinar. So like always, the webinar will be live on the Martin-Baker Hub in the next couple of hours. And so make sure you go and have a look, rewatch the webinar, mention that you've watched this webinar when you applied to the opportunities. And it's something that Andrew wants to know, and it's something that Catherine is very proud of from a couple of years ago. So the snapshots and the snippets will also be live on Gradcracker from tomorrow. So again, have a look at those. And this webinar actually wraps up this season of the Gradcracker webinars. I cannot believe it. It's gone so quickly. It's been a real pleasure to speak to the employers and the students, and me and Jess have just met some fantastic people, including you guys who've joined us today. So don't forget, all of the webinars, all of the snippets are within the Career Centre on Gradcracker and on the individual employer hubs as well. So go and take a look. Now is the time to do your prep, start thinking about which employers, which sectors, which industries you want to work in, and when a lot of our employers open their opportunities in the autumn, like Martin-Baker. And we will be releasing, we are doing a webinar series again next year, and so we're releasing the lineup of our exclusive employers over the summer. So make sure you check back on Gradcracker to find out who's going to go live with the webinars later on in the year. So thank you very much for joining us today, Martin-Baker. You've been absolutely brilliant as always, and good luck at everybody who's thinking about applying to their opportunities, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers,
Bye
everyone.
bye.